is very, very fascinating parsha. A lot of things happen very quickly. It's very dramatic. And the center story of this parsha is about Dinah. Dinah is abducted by Shechem ben Hamor, and she's raped. And astonishingly, someone for doing this doesn't blame Shechem. The Torah blames Yaakov. It's Yaakov's fault. How is it? Because earlier on in this week's parsha, Yaakov meets Esav, and before he meets Esav, he puts Dinah into a box so his brother Esav shouldn't see her, because he was afraid that if he saw her, she was very pretty and he would want to marry her, and Yaakov didn't want her to fall in the hands of Esav. But if she would have married Esav, she would have been able to make him do Teshuva. And therefore, since Yaakov prevented Dinah from meeting Esav, therefore he was punished and she was abducted, and she was by someone who by Shechem. And then Shimon and Levi go and they kill the entire city in retaliation. So it's an incredible thing to say. It's Yaakov's fault. He should have let his daughter marry Esav. Would you let your daughter marry Esav? Like, imagine a shadchan sends you a resume of Esav, like he's an ex-murderer and he's an adulterer and he's an idolater. And how would you like your daughter to marry him? Who in their right mind would agree to shidduch with Esav? And even more, is there not obligation to send your child on the forefront and to go into lion's den because you might be able to help someone there? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. There's an incredible danger over here. And where do we find the Torah? Hello? Don't worry, they still left some cookies. So if listeners are just tuned in, we're trying to figure this out. We're trying to figure out, Yaakov is punished because he hid Dinah from Esav. Had Dinah met Esav, Esav would have wanted to marry her, and Esav would have repented and returned to God. Punished because he hid her, and as a punishment, she was abducted. And the question is, what was Yaakov supposed to do? Was he supposed to say, "Oh yes, sure, my daughter should marry Esav. That's a great idea"? Let's engage to somebody, and all of a sudden the person you're engaged to is discovered that the person has done something which is very wrong. The Torah says you can cancel the shidduch. You agreed to marry somebody who you thought you could respect, and this person doesn't deserve your respect. And we find earlier on in the Torah, when Sarah finds Yishmael in her house, being a bad influence on Yitzchak, what does she say? And Hashem says she's right. Send the guy out of the house. He shouldn't be a bad influence. And here the Torah says it's all Yaakov's fault. He hid Dinah from Esav. He should have sent her to marry Esav. How?
Did somebody tell him to send her? Was he?
Esav went to attack Yaakov. When Esav eventually didn't attack Yaakov, at that moment he was friendly to Yaakov, right? So when he met Yaakov, he met all of Yaakov's family except for Dinah. Dinah was hidden away in a box.
But never was Yaakov told to, gave an example, like a shidduch was made. Would you let your daughter go through the shidduch? Was a shidduch made for him? Was he
No. It was just in a casual meeting and a casual shidduch. Yaakov prevented that from happening.
Okay, so it's a proof. He's not even denying a shidduch. He didn't let an opportunity happen, but he wasn't
right. He wasn't like
told him to let her meet him further.
Which makes the question even greater.
Right.
Why is Yaakov punished for doing what seems to be the right thing and something that any normal person would do? And it seems to be that we should learn from Yaakov. Hey, it was a great idea. He prevented his daughter from marrying a terrible guy. People are affected a lot by their friends. It's a real thing. The Gemara says that the nature of a person is always to be drawn after their neighbors. people you hang out with. You're drawn to people around you to follow their behavior. So it will make sense for a spouse that we're able to grow with, and you never marry this person so that you'll be able to inspire them to do teshuvah. People ask the Rebbe this question very often. Should I marry this person? If I marry them, I'll be able to bring them to do teshuvah. And the Rebbe very clearly said that marriage itself has a lot of pressure, and adding to the pressure to say, "Oh, I'm also," the whole religion thing, it's too much. So you can't say to someone, "I'm going to marry you, and in your sake, I'm going to keep your religion too." It's not something which can stand the test of time. I mean, as it is. So to add this whole thing, and I'm Shabbos for you, and I keep kosher for you. Well, at least put the toothpaste cap back on the toothpaste. Then we'll talk about keeping, all these other things that you want to do. So what is this? What's this idea of telling Dina she should have known to let Dina marry Esav to inspire him to do tshuva? Doesn't make any sense. We find a story in the Gemara about one of the greatest sages of all time, Recham and Zakkai, in Ethics of Our Fathers. We're told he had 5 amazing students. And by the way, if you eat while the Facebook thing is going, no one will know. They can't hear you chewing. So just the cookies are still available. Okay. And so El Rabbi Elazar ben Aruch, he was the top of the 5 top students of Recham and Zakkai. And this guy who's the top of the top visited a city called Yumsus. People in Yumsus were pretty coarse. And after his vacation, the Gemara says, when he came back home and he read the Torah, instead of reading the words in the Torah, this month is the first month for you, the month of Nisan, he read, your heart is deaf. Because that's what he was. His heart was deaf just by being in the environment of people. He was such a holy, righteous person. Being in that environment, being in any environment, it has an effect on you. So why is Yaakov punished for doing what seems to be the right thing? So some commentaries say, that the problem wasn't that he withheld Dinah from Esav. The problem was that he was he didn't care at all about his brother. Meaning, famous story of the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim says, it tells to one of his students that you're allowed to eat non-kosher. You're in the army, you have no choice, life is in danger, you're allowed to eat non-kosher. So he visits the army, once the Chafetz Chaim visits the army, and it's dinner time, and he sees his student eating non-kosher meat. And he starts to cry. And the student's like, why are you crying? You, Rebbe, told me yourself I could eat non-kosher, and I have to eat non-kosher. It's a mitzvah to eat non-kosher. So Chafetz Chaim said, yeah, but why are you sucking the bones?
Wait, what?
Sucking the bones. You have to eat it, but why are you so into it? So the reason why Yaakov is punished was not because he withheld Dina, was because he didn't care at all. He shut that box and he great. I didn't care about his brother. It didn't bother him that his brother would have no chance of doing teshuvah. That's what some commentaries say. Some commentaries say, interestingly, he didn't want Esav to do teshuvah. He thought, this guy, he'll do teshuvah, he'll join the community, and I know who Esav is. He's going to join. He's not real. He's going to pretend. I know who Esav is. It's never going to work. So I don't want him to marry my daughter and put on a kapata and whatever and hat and wear a tam tefillin and chitas. It's just on him. He's just gonna. It's just gonna be a show. It's not real. That's what other commentaries say, but it leaves us wondering what the issue is. So there's another question, even more painful question, that comes up in the next part of the Torah. Torah says Dinah goes out in the city, right? She's in a house full of boys. She has no sisters to play with. So what does she do? She goes out to meet people. So the Rashi comments, like a mother, like the daughter. Daughter is like the mother. Just like Leah was outgoing, Dinah is outgoing.
I thought they all were born with a twin sister.
Oh, very good. Very good. So I guess she had some people to play with, right? So why was she leaving the house? Okay, fine. Good point. Anyway, so if Leah is going causes her child Dinah to also be outgoing. Leah and Dinah have the same nature, being outgoing. Rashi is presenting it because she is not modest, she's outgoing, she's going out to the daughters of the city to see the other daughters of that country. That's why she was abducted. That's what it sounds like. But it's hard to say that, because what did Leah do? Leah wasn't meeting the wrong people. Who did Leah go out? When the Torah says Leah went out, who did she go out to see? She went out to see her husband. Why did she go out to see her husband? Rashi says because she really wanted to have these holy children that God had blessed her husband with. She knew there would be 12 children, and she wanted to make this happen, and therefore she went out to see her husband. That's what the Torah says about her. She went out to see Yaakov. That's not anything negative. So we can't say, when the Torah says that Dinah went out, negative, we have to say it means something. Rashi's source sounds like that way, but Rashi phrased it differently. It's clear when Rashi says that Dinah went out, it was just like her mother Leah, just like Leah had this incredible power to transform darkness into light, so too her daughter Dinah had the same exact power. Dinah and Leah had this incredible power, and her daughter was just like her mother. It wasn't a negative thing, it was a positive thing. And the power of Leah and Dinah is a power to transform. What exactly this power is and why only Leah and Dinah had this, let's go back a little bit. We find this really a astonishing explanation of the Rebbe that really gives you in 3 occasions seems to fight with his destiny, and Hashem each time and he suffers by fighting with his destiny, and yet Hashem pulls him in another direction. He wants to marry Rachel. And Rachel says to him right away, it's not going to work. You know my dad? My dad will never let the younger daughter get married before the older daughter. It's not going to work. So Yaakov says, don't worry, we'll figure this out. And eventually, Yaakov and Rachel are set to get married, and Rachel knows that her father is going to switch. It's very likely he'll switch Leah for Rachel, and Rachel is given a sign. You know what the sign was, by the way? What was the sign? You know? The sign word Chana. Chana is that women have, the mitzvah of Chala, Nida, Halacha Saner, Shabbos, candles, kosher, and family purity. So this was the sign that Yaakov told Rachel about Rachel, and was so good-hearted, so she saw that her sister was going to be embarrassed because her father had given Leah to Yaakov instead of her. By the way, how come Yaakov didn't figure this out? Some commentaries say the reason he didn't figure this out was because it was Erev Shabbos when they got married, Friday afternoon. A lot of people like to get married Friday afternoon. You ever been to a wedding Friday afternoon? It's very interesting. Anyway, so a lot of Hasidic people they do weddings on Friday afternoon. It's an interesting thing. So anyway, so love turns the lights out on Shabbos, so it's dark. That's one. Some commentaries say. Other commentaries say that Yaakov couldn't tell between Rachel and Leah because they were identical twins. And others say that Yaakov was a Hasidic chassan. So how often did he see the Kala? 7 years, but he was a Chassidish guy, so he didn't really know her that well. Either way, the point is that Rachel is destined. Yaakov wants to marry Rachel, but doesn't turn out that way. But why would Yaakov agree to shame the older daughter and marry Rachel instead? Why did he choose to marry Rachel? Why did he want to marry Rachel? And in fact, the right thing would have been to marry Leah. That's the right thing, to go in order. Luckily, you're allowed to daughter, but why would Yaakov do that to her? And even after, Yaakov's a guy of divine providence, right? He's a holy tzaddik. By divine providence, what happens? He marries Leah. So why does Yaakov wake up the next day and say, you know what? Okay, I wanted to marry Rachel, but clearly God is guiding me in a different direction, and therefore I should stay with Leah. He doesn't do that. The second he wakes up and he finds out that it's Leah, he says, well, I need to get married to Rachel. It's an interesting exchange, by the way, between him and Rachel, between him and Leah. He tells Leah, you are a daughter of a cheater. You're a cheater, a daughter of a cheater. Because she was part of it. So it's an interesting exchange. Leah says to him, you also cheated your father. You told your father that you were the firstborn. So some draw a deeper insight into this exchange. people were saying before, when Rachel and Leah, Yaakov and Esau were children, the older boy will marry the older girl, and the younger boy will marry the younger girl. So she was telling Yaakov, you sold your birthright. Since you sold your birthright, so really Esau sold the birthright to you, and therefore it makes sense that the girl should marry the older boy. So therefore, you were supposed to. She wasn't just saying wasn't just yelling back at him, you're this, you're that. She was saying it makes sense I should marry you because that's what the Torah says. When you buy the birthright, so that includes also the destiny of who's supposed to marry who. But anyways, Yaakov doesn't say, okay, it's my destiny, it's divine providence. Even Lavan and Besuel, when Eliezer came to their house, they said divine providence. It must be Rivka supposed to marry Yitzchak. They said that, and Yaakov should have said. He doesn't say that. He's, I need to marry. I want to marry who I want to marry. I want to marry Rachel. And where's Rachel? And he marries Rachel. And the truth is, he didn't live with Rachel too long. He married Rachel and Leah at 22. They were both 22, and Rachel passes away at 37, and Leah passes away at 44. So he was only with Rachel for 15 years, and after she passes away, Yaakov, for the last 3,500 years, has been buried again with Leah. So what's going on over here? So why does Yaakov always choose Rachel, and why is Hashem always sending him to Leah? Simple answer. What does the Torah say? Why did Yaakov want to marry Rachel? Because she was beautiful. Fast Torah, fast Mara, says the Torah. So that's the simple words of the Torah, but obviously the deeper meaning. We're talking about our patriarchs, we're completely chariots to God's will, totally holy. So it means something more. Gemara says that Rabbi Yochanan visited Rabbi Eliezer when Rabbi Eliezer was very sick, and Rabbi Eliezer started to cry. Crying. Are you crying because you didn't study a lot of Torah? Are you crying because you didn't make enough money in your life? Not everyone makes so much money. Are you crying because you lost a child when your child was young? Rabbi Yochanan brought with him a bone of one of the 10 children that died in his own lifetime. So why are you crying? Said Rabbi Yochanan. He was trying to say, like, the tragedy happens. Why are you crying? What's going on? Rabbi Eliezer responded to Rabbi Yochanan, I'm crying about your beauty, Rabbi Yochanan, that when you're going to pass away, your beauty is going to be in the earth. That's what Rabbi Eliezer says to Rabbi Yochanan. I'm crying about your beauty. What does that mean? He doesn't Torah, he doesn't care about anything else, just about the beauty of Rabbi Yochanan. What does that mean? So obviously, the beauty of Rabbi Yochanan doesn't just mean a physical thing. During the Shiva, the previous Rebbe, the Rebbe said stories about the previous Rebbe. And he said when the previous Rebbe was a child, the Rebbe Rashab was once learning together with another chassid named Rabbi Yaakov Motel Poltaver. They were sitting together. They saw the Rebbe Rashab saw the beauty of the Friedrich Rebbe's face as a child. And he wanted to kiss him, but he didn't kiss him because he decided to give instead, many years later, a chassidic kiss, and he gave him a deep discourse that he wrote. Then at the moment of when he wanted to kiss him, instead of kissing him, he gave him this. He wrote down this discourse to give to him. I mean, it sounds like a cruel thing to do. Instead of kissing him, he wrote a discourse. That sounds like, what? We'll give him both, right? So what really what it means is that he immortalized. Kissing is very easy. It's over. He immortalized the kiss. He made the kiss forever. He made this kiss lasted forever. He gave him something much far deeper and connected with him in a whole deeper way. But the point is, the beauty of the Friedrich Rebbe said, what did the Rebbe say? It indicated his pure thoughts. The beauty of his face was the beauty of his neshama. So when the Torah says that Yaakov loved Rachel because of her beauty, obviously doesn't mean they're just the physical beauty. Obviously means that there is the kedusha of Rachel. The kedusha of Rachel. What was the kedusha of Leah? What was the difference? Very good. So about Leah, what does the Torah say about Leah? The Torah says about Leah that her eyes. The Talmud says that she cried so much because, as I mentioned, people were saying the older daughter should marry the older son. Leah is going to marry Esau, so that made her. The hair of her eyebrows came out, and she was so she was the one who was always crying, always upset because of her where she was supposed to go to Esau. Rachel her beauty represents her characteristics. She gives away the signs. She doesn't want her sister to be embarrassed. She is a perfect tzaddikus, the holiest person who was born with a character trait of to give up of herself for another in the hardest way. So Yaakov says, that's what I want to marry. I want to marry someone who's so holy and so dedicated and so beautiful. That's the person I want to marry. Who is Leah? Who's a tzaddikus? Leah is the Baal Tshuva. Has to struggle, has to fight. Rachel represents perfection. Leah represents the struggle. So Yaakov, he wants to, why should anyone want to go to a world of struggle? Yaakov wants to go to marry someone who will produce children, who will have very, well-adjusted children, who will be able to handle whatever's going on in the world and very insulated and pure. But God wanted something else. God wanted Yaakov to marry Leah and to have children that will reinvent the world, that will change the world, transform darkness to light. That's the power of Teshuva. And this continued on in the next generation. Who are Leah's children? Her children were Yosef and Binyamin. Who is Yosef? Torah says that Yosef is called a tzaddik. Yosef the perfect tzaddik. And Binyamin says about the only reason they died is because of the sin of Adam and Eve. So they didn't do anything wrong. Binyamin was a perfect tzaddik. So just like Rachel was perfect, she had perfect children. And on the other hand, Reuven, we find Reuven has anger. Of course, we don't understand the Torah says about the patriarchs, their sins. It's not something that we're supposed to take literal. But at the same time, it's just the Ein Mikra Yitzei Pshutei, the pasuk has also a literal translation as well. Reuven gets angry. The Torah says Shimon and Levi destroyed the whole city. Yaakov he tells them, he criticizes them, and the story of Yehuda. But although they have all these seemingly character flaws on their level, whatever that means, they brought to the world something else. What did they bring to the world? The power of Teshuva. Think about the story of Yehuda and Tamar. Yehuda famously is, he has a daughter-in-law, Tamar, who her first two husbands die, and Yehuda does not want to give his third son to her, Shelah, because he's afraid that Shelah is going to die too. So, long story short, you know the story, right? I don't go the whole story. Yehuda and Tamar. So what happens is that Yehuda and she ends up meeting Yehuda and pretending to be a harlot, and Yehuda gives to her a sign that he's going to pay her later. And when Yehuda finds out that Tamar is pregnant, Yehuda says that she should be burnt at the stake. So when she is brought out to the stake to be burnt, she pulls out the signet ring and the cloak of Yehuda as a sign that says, I am pregnant with the one who this belongs to. So Yehuda admits his mistake. How did Yehuda have the power to admit his mistake? Where did he get that power to say, I was wrong? He got it from his mother. His mother gave him the power to realize that the difficulty is not your enemy. A difficulty is your job. It's your mission. When you experience difficulty, how do you look at it? Think also about further on in history, David and Shaul. When David does something that on his level is not on his level, he admits it. He says, I'm sorry, and he does tshuva. When Shaul does something, he can't admit it. He doesn't say the words. He blames the people. He blames his advisors. He doesn't say, I made a mistake. Why not? Because Shaul comes from Binyamin. He comes from perfect tzaddikim. There's no such thing. If you have a scratch on your forehead, that's it. You're out. But Leah gave the world the power of Teshuva, the power of recognizing the fault and recognizing the mistake and saying, that's okay. It's okay I have a challenge. It's okay I make mistakes because I can do Teshuva. And Hashem, and that's the whole point of the struggle in the first place is Hashem wants me to struggle with this challenge I have so that I could turn it around. So that's why Dinah had the power to transform Esau. Dinah was a daughter of Rachel, and she would have sit down next to Esau, and she would have told Esau, she would have married Esau. She would have sat down next to Esau, and she would have told Esau, yes, Esau, you have struggles. Yes, Esau, this is what's going on in your life right now. But you should know, Esau, that you can be the master of all challenges. You were born to be the one who can handle these kind of challenges and show the world what it means to overcome a struggle. That's what Esau's destiny was supposed to be. Esau that's what his soul was meant to do. But he didn't marry Dinah. He didn't have that. But Dinah could have given that to him. So basically, what we're going to through this discussion, what we're getting to is Number one is the power of influencing others, how important that is, and if a person has that nature, has that tendency of being able to inspire others, how that has to be used. And also we're getting from this, another important point is, one place the Gemara says it's better if a person was never born. Another place says in the Torah, the world is very good. So you look carefully, which is it? Is the world very good, or is it better we weren't born? So you look carefully at the words of the Torah. It says noachlo. It's easier not to have been born. It's easier, but it's better. But if you're born, you have a mission to do in this world. Toiv ma'od. You can bring a light through your struggle and overcoming the struggle you have. You bring to the world a light that was never brought to the world before. People wonder about Leah though. Why didn't Leah ever marry Esav? So if Rachel, if Dinah was supposed to marry Esav, and she could have transformed him, why didn't Leah marry Esav? So that doesn't. Everybody says, one point everybody says is that Leah had this characteristic, wasn't of transformation, but it wasn't fully developed yet. Only in her child, in her offspring, was this characteristic fully developed, and therefore only Dinah had this power. Others say that when Esav was younger, Esav was untransformable. He was too hot and crazy to talk to him. And it's different when Leah, when Dinah is born, and she's going with if Yaakov would have sent her in that direction, she certainly could have had, with the power of Yaakov's blessing, that would have been a whole different thing. But the bottom line is that in our time, people are in all kinds of environments, meeting all kinds of people, and Hashem wants us to realize, that just we have our own challenges. People have challenges, and we have to share what we know and to inspire others. That's the bottom line. And any questions, comments, criticism, tomatoes, cucumbers? Yeah.
Sure. How did Yehuda have the authority to say burn it at the stake?
He was the head of the Jewish court at the time. He was the head of the Senate.
What was the basis?
What was the process?
What was the basis?
Basis, because basically the law was that she was supposed to marry his son-in-law.
Which he didn't want anyway.
Which he didn't want.
But she was like halacha.
Betrothed?
She was betrothed. Yeah.
Even though, but it's one of those kind of marriages that happens automatically. Meaning,
So she was in like.
you heard of Yibum? You know what Yibum is? Right. She was supposed to do
He
Yibum.
was forcing her to be stuck in that.
Right. By the way, there's a beautiful, beautiful teaching of the Bas Ayin. Unbelievable. I think I welcome already. What time is it?
8:44.
44.
Just because if she was guilty before, then she was guilty after. Just why would the fact that it was him change her verdict?
That's a very good question.
Could her father do what the brother can do for having a child in his son's name?
I remember reading that explanation also. I think there's other explanations as well. So I want to share with you what the Bas Ayin says. Bas Ayin says an amazing thing. The Bas Ayin says like this. It's an unbelievable idea. It was 3 months since she was with Yehuda, and then her pregnancy was recognizable. So the Bas Ayin says like this: there are 3 months between Yom Kippur and Chanukah. 3 months after Yom Kippur, a Jew makes all kinds of good decisions on Yom Kippur, but afterwards, after Yom Kippur goes, and we go our own merry way, right? So and then 3 months. So what does the Satan tell Hashem? What does the Satan tell Yehuda? Tell the judge. Yehuda represents Hashem. Yud Kei Vav Kei is in his name. So she says, Zansa Tamar Kralasecha. Your Tamar, you're the Jewish people who are the word represents the Jewish people because it has as a one heart. So to a Jew is one heart for Hashem. The Satan tells God, your Tamar, your Jewish people, Zansa, they're not faithful to you. And not only they're not faithful to you, Gam Haros in them, they're also pregnant with an illegitimate child, which spiritually means the Jewish people are not just not faithful, but their unfaithfulness is something which is very deep. They're not just practically unfaithful. Their unfaithfulness is something which is in their kishkas. They don't care about you at all. So, what does Tamar respond to this? Tamar takes out chaysamcha, psilecha, umata shabiyadecha. The chaysamcha, which means your signet ring, also means the jar of oil, the oil of the Menorah. And psilacha comes from psilos. Psilos means wicks, the wicks of the menorah. And mata is the numerical equivalent to kli, to the vessel, which means the menorah. She says, you want to know who's my kishkas? To the one who this belongs to, that's who I'm pregnant with. Meaning the Jew says to Hashem, you want to know who's in my kishkas? The one who this menorah belongs to. I like the menorah, and that's who is in my. That's who I care about. And what does God respond? God responds, what did Yehuda tell Tamar? She's right. I didn't give her Sheila. Since I didn't give her Sheila, therefore she's correct. Who is Sheila? Sheila, same letters as the word Shiloi. Shiloi means Mashiach. It's also a very nice restaurant on Pico. So Yehuda said, you know why the Jewish people aren't faithful in some way? It's not because they're really unfaithful. I didn't send the Mashiach. Therefore, they have all these challenges. That's why there's such a problem. So therefore Yehuda says that the judgment against her is not correct, and she should be saved and she should be blessed. So the court, the heavenly court, makes rulings on Shoshana, Yitzil, and Kippur, but Chassidim say until Zeus Chanukah, on the last day of Chanukah, you can fix things up. So the end of the judgment, that's when something comes before Hashem, says, okay, you see, they made decisions, they're not the same way. So a Jew, by lighting the menorah, Chanukah, that brings out how a Jew says to Hashem, no, my kishka is who I care about.